Welcome back to So What Media. We're here with the one of the most highly anticipated films of the year, which is Spider-Man: Brand New Day, directed by Destin Cretton, helming the ship for the Spider-Man franchise with returning cast members such as Tom Holland, Zendaya, with newcomers with Sadie Sink and John Bernthal, and so many more we'll get into. As well as Jacob Batalon, and also newcomers as well, Mark Ruffalo, again with the Hulk coming back as well. And yeah, I can just say here, were we pleased? Our expectations were high for this movie. This is being now the fourth Spider-Man movie in any franchise. So there's a lot of expectation seeing how we're going to be evolving this character that we've now grown up with, right? With this version of Tom Holland, who's now not a kid anymore. He's a man. And now we're seeing how we're going to adjust with this character in this new season of his life. Now go through new many challenges and stuff. But I'll say that what we have here in terms of tone shift and the complexity of the character of Peter Parker, when you feel like we've gone through so many different stories and nothing left to tell, absolutely there is, especially with this version. Jake King, what was your thoughts in terms of going into Spider-Man Brand New Day and your expectations and what you got?
And I definitely had a lot of expectations for this movie because it's like, as we said, yeah, the first time a Spider-Man movie has reached its fourth installment. And now we're no longer in the teenage high school era of Peter Parker. We're in that post-college era Peter Parker. And so it's like there was a lot riding on this, not only for being the fourth Spider-Man movie, but also being different than what had come before. And also introducing and reintroducing characters, as well as being the last movie before Avengers Doomsday hits us in about 4 months from now. So it's like, yeah, a lot was riding on this movie, but I'd say personally, for me, after seeing this movie for the first time, yeah, I think that I really, really enjoyed this movie. I think most of my expectations were met. There are some small little things here and there, which some we could talk about now, others we'd have to wait until the spoiler, video to talk about. But I could say for the most part, I am genuinely pleased with this film. I'm pleased with the performances that we have gotten here from all our cast members. I am extremely pleased with the directing by Destin Cretton, coming from Shang-Chi and from Wonder Man onto here and bringing his style of, personal stakes and giant scale fighting stakes that he had brought to Shang-Chi to the Spider-Man world. And I think he was indeed the perfect director to shift from the high school era things that John Watts gave us to a much more mature and personal Peter Parker storyline that feels right here at home while also feeling grand at the same time. Like, it feels like you're witnessing the events of like the 80s or 90s or early 2000s Spider-Man comics of Peter Parker, of not a kid anymore. He's an adult. He's dealing with realistic things that a lot of us can relate to. And I think with this movie, especially for those of us in our early to mid to late 20s, I think we could definitely relate to what he goes through within this movie without a doubt.
Yeah, and I want to go over the plot of this movie. The film goes as follows. Peter Parker devotes his life to protecting New York City as full-time Spider-Man, but as the demands on him intensify, the pressure sparks as a surprising physical evolution that threatens his existence, even as a strange new pattern of crimes give rise to one of the most powerful threats he's ever faced. This film is going to be released on July 31st. And yeah, there's after the events of No Way Home, the question is like where Peter Parker goes from here. Now that nobody knows who he is, but yeah, people still know who Spider-Man is, right? After the spell that was cast by Doctor Strange, now that MJ and Ned, the two people they care about the most, are still living at the moment, have no memory of him whatsoever, and that's on Peter's making the ultimate sacrifice after the death of Aunt May. And you feel that weight in this movie, and even after you watch this, non-spoiler, that there is a level of narrative and emotional history that was established, even how the film periodically goes back and make flashbacks to previous films, and even surprisingly give you context to scenes that happened, but you never had a chance to see. We get to go back in time and see a certain scene or moment in Peter Parker's journey through a different lens, and it was shot additional scenes, and I'm not even gonna lie, like it was like, oh man, that they shot that very well. And I thought they did very well trying to add the emotional layer of Marissa Tomei's Aunt May effect on this version of Peter Parker. as well as MJ and Ned as well, as they live on their own lives after they just graduated at MIT, and they're still living in New York, but they feel like there's something lingering around, right? And Peter Parker just been doing this now on his own, and that's the biggest thing that fans have been asking for, is that they want Peter Parker to be by himself, broke, no women, and suffering. So, and you get that in this movie, but you get triumph and see how he overcomes that, saying that maybe being alone is not the best thing to do. In terms of comic book level, Easter eggs in here, there's a lot of them. There's going to be a lot of characters, name drops in the backgrounds that you have to pay attention to, as well as you saw in the trailer, comic book shots that they recreated through slow-mo action scene, giving you literally textbook frame from the comics, right? Now, one negative I will have is that this film does periodically, as much as it has a lot of different characters from the comics, is that it's morely used for, I guess, fan service and the level of sense of showing the history of what Peter Parker, Spider-Man, been doing in New York since No Way Home, dealing with the crime in New York and dealing with street level villains, right? And you don't really get that much backstory with hardly any of these street level villains, aside from your own imagination, you knowing the history of these characters. That's literally it. But that's not the story of this movie. And what you really see is that Peter Parker is going through physical changes. He's getting organic webbing that has been revealed in the trailers, but that scene that is also tied to emotional thing of him being consumed by that spider nature in his DNA, not and trying to find that balance, which is a metaphor of terms of him how to manage his own personal life, his emotions, and balancing his life from being Peter Parker and Spider-Man, or instead of being fully consumed by the identity of Spider-Man. That you can choose that I'm not just Peter Parker, I'm not just Spider-Man, I'm both. And you get a lot of emphasis on the fact that Peter Parker has people that are looking out for him, even as Spider-Man. Before we get to the MJ and Ned storyline, he has connections to New York with other characters, which I won't say. But it's interesting. Like, he's in New York City. We know where we're at. We have other comic book characters here in this city, and you get that connection here blatantly with this in a smart way, where people are asking, hey, where's this character at? How did this? And it fully explain out for you. But J. King, I just want to know your thoughts, as well as, again, my point about the villains in terms of the comic book nature of this film, before we get to a big character that we need to dive into.
I will say this when it comes to both, not only the villains, but also what you were saying in terms of like Peter. Yes, with this, we do see that in the intermediate time between No Way Home and this movie, that Peter has faced off against a bunch of villains, that have, again, just passed by. You've seen them in the trailers, like Boomerang or Tarantula. You've seen them have these iconic comic book shots that, yes, were deliberately filmed like that to recreate those comic book covers. And yes, there is the sense of like, okay, there is a lot of them and some don't get as much time as others, but I think it's more so, and it is a bit of a downer, but at the same time, I also think that they're doing that to establish the friendly neighborhood on the streets Spider-Man that he is, to the best way possible, to show what he has been up to since, the events of No Way Home, and also just to show how he has been patrolling things and taking care of a New York post the events of Daredevil Born Again season 2 as well. Like, a lot of what happened there is also integrated in this film, as we knew, because the two teams have been talking back and forth. So we knew that there was communication between the both to make sure it was cohesive, and you definitely feel that. I think one of the things I can also say about this film is that each character is here for the amount of time that is necessary, for the most part. I'd say that for the likes of Mark Ruffalo here as the Hulk. I could say that here for the likes of John Bernthal as Punisher. And we'll talk more about that dynamic as well. I can even say that about MJ and Ned. It's like, everyone is here for the amount of time that they need to be. They're not, overstuffing this. This still feels like a Spider-Man movie, even with the amount of things that go on here that we can't talk about right now. But again, it's like they found a nice balance about that. And going as well into the whole Peter Parker aspect of it, there's an old saying: when Spider-Man fails, Peter Parker succeeds. And when Peter Parker fails, Spider-Man succeeds. And you definitely feel that with this movie, especially given the fact that Peter Parker is really a non-entity, right now in his own life, because you see as Spider-Man, he's succeeding, very well. And, a lot of things going on, but, Peter Parker, not that much. So I like the way that they brought that in, that feeling of like, when one succeeds, the other, the classic dynamic that also goes back to the whole brokenness about Peter Parker and, being alone. And I also love the message that they have with it as well, and how it connects to other characters throughout there. It's like the big through line. It's like, does he really need to be alone to be Spider-Man, or to be Peter Parker, or to just be a human,
Yeah, and this is the first time as we get into the addition of John Bernthal to Punisher, because we see John Bernthal and Tom Holland have history with both of these characters and how they came into the MCU and everything. But you definitely have wonderful chemistry between them both, not just in their personal life, but with these characters knowing each other, right? And they do not really censor any things about Punisher. Like, yes, he's a rated R character, but when he's utilized in a way where like he's acting like Frank Castle. What would Frank Castle do in the situation, right? But at the same time, this is a Frank Castle who has matured. He have worked with people before, right? And what does not only John Bernthal has an effect on Punisher, but what does Spider-Man have effect on him, right? So and there's some things that did are absolutely hilarious in this, especially in the third act with John Bernthal, but also very emotional as well, where, again, going back to the comic book nature, you get comic book moments with these characters, and they come in the best way possible, where it's not forced. Like, even how certain shots come up, you're like, oh man, they did it, and then it adds another layer to it. And it's beautiful. But you see that, I think John Bernthal did an amazing job, and definitely where Punisher has a place on the small screen and on the big screen as well. And definitely, I hope they have a long future for Punisher cinematically as they do on television. But also, as we kind of wrap things up, we have to mention another character, which we can't say, but the actor Sadie Sink, who I believe is the best part of this movie. In my opinion, I think she, aside from Tom Holland's performance, she gave the strongest performance in this movie, and probably one of the strongest performances I've seen this actress in a while, since like Stranger Things season 4, right? And she did an amazing job here. Definitely took notes from Millie Bobby Brown. That's all I'll say. But she really did a good job of balancing that emotional vulnerability of her character, but also this is a character that's on her own, has a history, has trauma that she's dealing with, but also has abilities that are definitely catastrophic and can be very dangerous when it's in the wrong hands, right? And when it's not controlled. I thought they did a really good job of having time spent for us to care about this character. Now, there are some choices that they make with this character, and it is a comic book character that and again, avoid spoilers as much as you can so you see this movie, but it's obvious. But I felt that there was changes that were made where you think, oh wait, this character actually doing some dark things here. But then I'm like, oh well, it's not like this character doesn't have a dark moment in her history, in her in her comic book. Yes, this character was placed in this movie as just a way to serve Peter's story, but she definitely steals the third act in a way that was very powerful, and definitely wraps things up in terms of the emotional journey that Peter goes through this movie. But J. King, what was your thoughts on Sadie Sink's character without saying, who she is?
Yeah, no. Try again. Avoid the internet, guys, because it's crazy out there. It is really crazy. But we really can't say who she is. But I will say that indeed she is definitely one of the best performances within this movie, because it really just became a point where it's I didn't see Max from Stranger Things. I just saw Sadie Sink as such and such character. I just saw that character really, and especially having been someone, that knows that character a lot, from the comic book storylines and such. It's I just saw that. And again, she really gave a great performance in here. And I think both on her own and also with her connections to Peter Parker. I think her and Tom Holland work off of each other really well, especially within that third act. Especially within the third act, you can tell it's like, again, this is her introduction into the MCU, and I already would love to see her and Tom Holland again as these characters in like another, big thing. Again, we know we're going to see her again in Avengers Secret Wars. That's already been confirmed. And when you see this film, you understand why. Again, not saying, but I was just like, she gave an amazing emotional performance that I really can't wait to talk more about when we can talk about spoilers, because it's just like there's just so much I want to praise about it. But it's just like, Sadie Sink, fantastic, not only by herself as this character, but also this character's dynamic and relationship towards Peter Parker Spider-Man. So it's just like, hands down, definitely one of the best performances within this movie, and makes you excited to see more, without a doubt.
And that's much we really can say in terms of, not going to spoilers, and we'll give our spoiler review later this week when you guys get a chance to see this on July 31st. But yes, does this film succeed? It absolutely does. I did not leave disappointed. I left very satisfied and left excited for the future. There is one end credit scene, and it's at the very, very end. Do as what you may with it, but it definitely leads into something coming very, very soon. But aside from that, we'll get more detail in our spoiler review. But make sure you hit subscribe button, comment, like, and share. Let us know your thoughts when you get a chance to go see Spider-Man Brand New Day theaters near you this Friday. All right, guys, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.